screening is fair and consistent, whether it's human or machine. We would never want to let AI scoring go and kind of have access to candidates without any human interactions.
Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Talent Download podcast. This is the first one that we'll be doing today, so I'm delighted to welcome Martin Kavanagh, who's Head of Assessment for us at Amberjack, and also introduce you to Lauren Edge, who's our Principal Consultant within Assessment. Both occupational psychologists, both do an amazing job for us here at Amberjack. Today, we're going to kick it off talking about AI in the screening process. So if I look at recruitment at the moment, there's lots and lots of noise that's happening at the moment in the sector regarding the use of AI tools. I'm really proud of the way in which Amberjack is actually using that technology to see advancements and improvements for what I believe is the candidate experience. We've obviously developed a tool which is live, which is actually screening video screens at the moment of candidates. But there's a big question out there at the moment. Is it fair? Is it a fair process for organisations to be using bots to basically help with us, help through that process with us? And those are the types of questions that I think are the big questions that we want to try and answer today, and try and get to the bottom of, which hopefully for all the listeners out there, they'll enjoy the conversation. We'll get a tiny bit into the science, get a bit of understanding about what we think about it, where we think I guess the next phase will be a little bit at the end in the discussion as well. But I think when we sort of first start thinking about this, quality assurance is probably the place to go to first before we actually start talking about AI in the overall process. So let's talk about that and the QA process. I think it'd be good for people to understand from an Amberjack perspective, what does that look like? What does that feel like?
So from our perspective, one of the most important things when it comes to screening is making sure that our screeners are being fair and consistent, and they're not showing any bias when they're screening our candidates coming through the process. And at Amberjack, we've got a QA team. We've got principles that we're really proud of when it comes to quality assurance to make sure that is the case. So we make sure that when our screeners first begin their journey, they go through some really rigorous training in line with British Psychological Society best practice on how to be fair and consistent in their screening. But what we do know is that, as people are going along, sometimes if they're particularly tired, if they're having a bit of an off day, maybe if scoring guidelines aren't quite clear enough, maybe they've got a high cognitive load to utilise, that sometimes screeners maybe aren't able to perform at their best. So we then come in as part of the process and ensure that we are assuring that quality of the screening. So we've got various principles that we follow in order to do that. One of them, which we're particularly proud of at Amberjack, is our calibration process. So before screeners even get going with their screening, we sit them down, we live score some candidates together, we review what best practice looks like, and we make sure they're aligned. And we don't let them screen at volume unless they are aligned with what we expect. So we get the client involved, we make sure they're bought into the process, have an opportunity to share their thoughts, as well as ensuring that the screeners understand the indicators that they're going to be using. Once screeners have been through that calibration process and we're happy that they are aligned, we then move them to volume. And once they are at volume, we continue that quality assurance process. So we continue to check in on the screeners. We have a QA consultant who reviews their scores, makes sure they're aligned. If they're not, then we give them feedback. If we need to take them off volume screening while we realign them, then we do that.
And it's interesting that the conversation that we want to have today is about AI and how we've introduced that into the process. But just big you up a little bit, you've just recently written a blog. It's on our website at the moment regarding this topic. And you mentioned in that blog, good people can make the wrong decisions. Can you share an example of that in the QA process of what we've experienced, I guess, at Amberjack and how that's taken shape?
Definitely. So I think, as I mentioned just before, sometimes, for instance, if scoring guides are particularly complicated or nuanced and take a lot of cognitive load to actually utilize, so if they take a lot of brain power, if screeners are, if they're feeling tired, maybe if they've got something going on outside of work that they're thinking about, it can be hard to give enough attention to the scoring guidelines, and that can then influence or impact how they're scoring. So one of the things we always do prior to going live is reviewing those scoring guidelines to make sure they're as simplified as possible for our assessors effectively, so they can be effective in their screening without having outside factors impacting on them.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of relates to the point, we can have screeners that are screening at 9 o'clock on a Monday, but we've got screeners screening at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and that quality assurance piece is important, but it's when you get to the tech piece, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I guess that's kind of a constant ultimately, but maybe we'll explore that topic in a little bit more. But how at the moment do our employees, humans, react to our feedback from a quality assurance perspective? How do we kind of correct mistakes or how that happens? What's the feedback? What's the reality?
I might jump in there because I think one of the things about Amberjack as a company is our people really care about getting it right. They want to they realize that even though we're dealing with huge volumes and perhaps, for some of our campaigns, they're looking at 10,000 video interview responses for a campaign, they still see each individual and they want to get it right for that individual because they know how important these decisions are. These, people's careers are at the line on responsible here, and they get feedback and they're responsible for giving feedback to people, and they hear the reactions to the candidates who are devastated when they don't get these roles. So they feel that they want to get it right. They absolutely have to get it right. They want to get it right. They're very motivated to get it right. And we get the right people in, we train them in the right way, we give them the right skills so they can do that. So in terms of feedback, they're incredibly receptive. And I think it's fair to say they're probably too receptive. They really beat themselves up if they get the wrong decision, if they reach the wrong decision, and we're telling them that through our quality assurance process. They really sort of beat themselves up about it. So we shouldn't have let that happen, but we thought it's a natural part of a volume process. That's why we're running this process. I'd say that they've got a really healthy attitude to improving and making sure next time they get it right.
Yeah, I think it's the application rate which has significantly increased. I think I saw some data just come out from one of the associations, I think it was just last week. And I think it was in 2002, the general application to one job was around about 35 applications per job. I think it's currently running at 145, and that matters, to us as a business ultimately about the way in which we can kind of process those individuals. And I get the essence and the sense of why our people will care ultimately regarding it. So I think that's important. Do you think there is key principles in the QA process that you have to make sure you follow ultimately, and what are they? What should they be?
Yeah, well, Lauren touched on some of them. I mean, first and foremost, you need when you're scoring and following any sort of human related process, you want as tight a team as possible doing that. As you say, that becomes more and more of a challenge as we scale up. So last year, we scored 50% more video interviews than we did the year before. So we try to keep a really close-knit team of very well-qualified, well-trained people. But as we scale, we need to bring more people in, make sure the training continues to be really strong. So you want to use as few people as possible to score your exercises so that you can disseminate content and make sure they understand the responsibilities well, and you can check their quality much more regularly. So that's quite a key principle. Another principle, coming back to what the assessment team do, is the materials need to set our people up for success. So you need to design processes, scoring indicators that allow people to score effectively. So Lauren touched on it. We've seen in our experience, assessment exercises where the scoring has a really high cognitive load. So it's quite hard for the person scoring to be thinking about the response. Does it meet the indicators? Because they're quite hard to understand. So simple things like making the indicators really plain English, making sure that they're really well related to what you're asking the candidate to do. So when people are scoring, you're setting them up for success. So those are the probably two key principles we look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's good to understand that quality assurance process, but let's get on to the topic at hand in terms of what we're here to talk about is the AI introduction, into that process. So why did we do it? Why did we think it was important to do if we've got kind of quite a robust human sort of element that was happening for us?
I think it's the point we were talking about, that there's volume of applications that are coming through, the scale of increases, having to deal with that huge volume. The way we were working worked really well for the increases we were seeing year on year, but it's starting to get to that point where it's like, well, we need other ways as we as a company grow, and as the external factors means there's lots more applications for one individual role. There needs to be a different approach and different approaches to how we do that.
Yeah, and I think at Amberjack, what we've seen is that increased application rate, which we obviously spoke about, sort of that 135 applications that are coming through to a period ago where it was a lot lower for us. So is it your opinion that within the recruitment process, AI we have to kind of adopt it as organisation or early careers experts, volume experts into our overall process to kind of combat? We're sort of combating, I guess, ultimately what's happening in the market.
Yeah, we absolutely have to adopt it. But one thing I would say, I always get this phrase the wrong way around. The phrase that comes up a lot is that imperfect action beats perfect inaction. I hear that said a lot, but actually I think with adoption of AI, people have taken that too far, and there has been too much imperfect action introducing AI in perhaps a little bit of a risky way, without using the people with the domain expertise to understand, is that tech being used in the right way? Which is why you mentioned the blog that Lauren wrote, that really sets out how we've made sure that our introduction of AI is as safe as possible, given the importance of the decisions we're making and some of the high profile examples that there have been of AI introducing bias into assessment processes. So we've really made sure that we're introducing AI in as safe as way as possible. And the more we speak to our clients about it, the more they're really understanding the care we're putting into it. And it means they can trust us to introduce their processes.
Yeah, so if people aren't using it at the moment, and appreciate it's a new season for us, and we're just introducing it to a selection of different clients around it. When we're talking to clients, what are we talking about, the problems that we're trying to solve ultimately for it? I mean, you talked about bias within that. Is there any others that people should sort of consider?
Bias, yeah. So the consistency of the scoring. So we are making sure on any campaign that our assessment goes live on, that the AI is really well calibrated to that specific campaign. And that goes as far as the indicators that campaign is looking at, the behaviors they're wanting to get at, but also the context of that client, the types of people they're looking for, the behaviors they need to demonstrate in role. We're making sure the AI is calibrated well to that. So that's key. So it's making sure you're essentially getting and identifying and assessing the behaviors that matter to that individual client, to that individual campaign, for the individual purposes they're doing. And that's what our clients are really benefiting from.
Yeah. And Lauren, when we talked a little bit about kind of the human aspects around what we, previously have done before within the quality assurance part. Are we blending that with sort of human aspect and AI for the process that we're going through at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we obviously don't want to just introduce AI and let it go, run at volume. So we implement exactly the same process as we do for our human screeners. So we run a calibration with the AI before we even move it to volume screening. So we make sure that it can utilize the scoring guides effectively. It's giving the sorts of scores that our QA team would give, that it's able to give feedback, a rationale, around the score that it gives, so we can understand why it's given that score. And we have principles that we put into place as well. So throughout the AI screening process, humans are involved. So we've got a QA process. We QA 30% minimum of the AI screens to ensure they are consistent. But we obviously also have needs for human screeners regardless. So one of the things we're really keen for is that candidates have the opportunity to opt into the AI scoring. We're not forcing it on them. They don't have to have it. They can have human screeners if they want to. So if they don't opt into the AI process, then they go through the typical manual screening process. So that's kind of how we're keeping humans involved. And with the AI, our model is transcript-based. So it only scores on the transcript of what the candidate has said. The AI will give us back a confidence rating on that transcript. So if it thinks it hasn't been able to transcribe the candidate's response effectively, it automatically goes into the pile for human screeners to screen and to look at. And as well, if it gives it can give a confidence rating on how well it thinks it has scored that response. Mm-hmm. So if it's a low confidence rating, then that automatically also goes into a human pot for screening. Mm-hmm. And at the moment, whilst we're in these, early stages of the AI implementation, that confidence rating is set quite high. So at the moment, anything below 90% is filtering through into human screening, just so that we can make sure it is being consistent.
I think that's quite an important point, and just make sure everyone sort of clearly understood that point is what we're looking at is the transcript. So, similar to like you do a Teams meeting, you get your transcript next to you. That's what we're doing within the video screen, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. So no... kind of the AI doesn't know who the person is, what their background is. They sat in a bedroom with a messy bed in the background. It's all about the words that they have said rather than, the context around it.
Yeah, good, which I think is important. And another plug for the blog that was written again. So I'll make sure I get my words right. So you talked about an AI with a human wraparound. Basically was kind of the quote from you, and I think you've explained that to a point, but what does that mean, I guess, ultimately? Is that kind of the quality assurance, the check kind of around it?
Yeah, exactly. So it's really important to us, obviously, that the screening is fair and consistent, whether it's human or machine. We would never want to let AI scoring go and kind of have access to candidates without any human interaction. So we do always ensure that is that human wraparound. So we've got the upfront calibration process to make sure it is aligned. But when we are going through the scoring at various points in the process, we've got some analysis that we do. So we consistently monitor, the spread of scores that the AI is giving us. Is it showing any adverse impact towards any particular demographic groups? If at any point anything does flag to us, then we would obviously pause it and have a look at what we can do to adjust the scoring. It's really easy for us to adjust the scoring if we need to, and if we were to do that, we would, as humans, check it first before we set it back to volume.
The thing I might add, one of the things that is great about working in the assessment team at Amberjack is that Amberjack offer the full end-to-end services. So we don't just think about how the assessment itself is working. We think about all aspects of the candidate journey in collaboration with the various team members. So Lauren was speaking about how candidates know that they're going to be scored using our AI technology. So we spent a lot of time working out what we should be saying to them. How do we do it in an empathetic way? So this is why we're scoring in this way. We're confident this is the right way to do it. We're putting all of these steps in place. But if you don't want it, you've got someone there ready to go and we'll score it manually. It's a really great piece of communication work. And what we found in our early trials is 90% of candidates are saying that they're happy to be scored by the AI technology, and only 10% are saying, actually, could I have the human interaction, which I think is testament to how we're managing them through the process. And then you avoid that risk further down the line where they assume they've been scored by AI, but they're not sure. Or worse, they think they've been scored by a human and they've actually been scored by AI, which has got risks in terms of GDPR. So it's a very transparent process, and it is working really well in terms of candidates.
So maybe it'd be good just to talk through what that candidate experience is. So, I'm a new candidate. I'm coming in to our systems. What does that feel like regarding it? I've got boxes I select in terms of whether I'm happy. How does that look?
Yeah, so it basically is that. So we've got our blended assessment at Amberjack typically, which is where our video interview will sit. We do have some video interview only clients, but candidates would enter the assessment, they'd watch an introductory video, then they would accept our privacy policy, and then we've got a page dedicated to the consent to AI. So there's a number of statements on that page about how we ensure fairness and consistency through the AI know. We've got the human quality assurance piece, so that we will be checking that it is consistent. And then there's quite clearly a box that says "I consent," so they know that is what they are consenting to.
Good, and that's going back to your point then, Martin. What we're seeing in early trials within clients, that 90% are happy to be screened by the bot.
Yeah, there's a lot of academic literature. You said we'd get into the science, and maybe I can bore people with it now. There's a lot of academic literature that candidates much prefer a human screener, which is partly what took us. We really wanted to make sure we were getting it right, because we didn't want to lose the benefits that we've historically had from human screeners scoring our candidates. But myself and Lauren and the rest of the assessment team, when we've spoken about this, our hypothesis is that probably because they don't trust it. They've seen the Netflix documentaries. They heard about the Amazon example where it started to introduce systematic bias. Some of those things really got a lot of attention. So I think candidates don't trust it. But because of how transparent we are in the communication, because of how we're bringing candidates with us, they do. And as I said, it speaks for itself. I think, again, we played a little game where we guessed how many candidates would opt in given how transparent we were being. And we've ranged between sort of 70 and 80%, we thought. So having 90% say, yes, I know what you're telling me, and I'm happy to have my assessment scored by AI is showing that we're building up trust. And we're seeing that at the other end as well, when they go through the process, when they've had their feedback back to them, when they tell us how they found the process, they're being very positive about how they found it.
Yeah, and I think you talk about the confidence rating kind of regarding the process. From what you're saying, the candidates feeling the fairness in the process, then we're feeling secure that we're doing everything right. I guess any other thoughts regarding that of what we're doing that kind of gives that security to them?
I think candidates, we collect NPS scores as part of our processes. So although we are obviously in the early stages, the kind of the feedback on that is all very positive. Candidates do feel that the process is a good experience. I think one of the benefits, I know you mentioned before, what are the benefits of bringing in the AI scoring? One of the things is actually to stop bottlenecks. So obviously you mentioned yourself the higher number of applications that we're seeing per role in comparison to a few years ago. The more people that need screening, if you've got human screeners, just the longer it's naturally going to take, because we want to make sure, obviously, we're doing it right, that we are quality assuring. So for some candidates, if they're applying for particularly high volume roles, if we've got those bottlenecks, they're having to wait even longer to get updates on, are they being invited to the next process? Have they unfortunately failed the process? So by introducing the AI scoring, we're able to get through those numbers quicker in the same fair and consistent way as with our human screeners. But from a candidate's perspective, then their experience is even better than before. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the feedback that we're getting from candidates is really positive.
In our account management package, we ask 4 questions, which again are sort of evidence-based. These are ways of showing an assessment process work. We ask, are we getting the right quality of candidates through to the later stages and into role? Are candidates saying good things about our process? Is it as efficient as possible in terms of recruiter time and candidate time to get the evidence you need to make a good decision? And are we making sure a good pipeline of a range of candidates are getting through? So what we mean by that is you get a proportion of candidates with different demographic characteristics. Is that holding up through the process? So we look at all of our campaigns through that lens, but obviously with the introduction and pilot of AI, we've been particularly scrutinizing the campaigns that have used AI scoring. So we will be able to see with confidence that it's saying that we're saying yes to all of those questions. And that's back to that QA point. We will only release it live on a certain campaign if we're confident that we're going to get a good response to the questions we ask.
And I think you touched upon it a little bit earlier. When the AI is uncertain regarding the situation or transcript and analysing that, human steps in then? Overall in the process,
so it flags to us, on a percentage of 0 to 99 or 100, 0 to 100%, how confident it is in how it has transcribed and then how it has scored. So at the moment it's set that anything with a high percentage automatically comes through to human screeners. We'll monitor that over time. Potentially in the future we can look to drop it if we're happy from a percentage upwards that it is what we would expect from it. But at the moment, we're keeping that quite high just so that we can do that additional monitoring and keep that human involvement.
And there's a lot of talk, you reference Netflix, different areas regarding bias of the AI in the overall process. We've talked about the quality assurance piece regarding it. What's your perspective of that bias? Have you seen it in your tests, etc.? Have you seen any reality to that in terms of biases forming through the tech?
Well, no, it's something we monitor really, really closely, and we make sure they're not. So again, as I say, as part of our account management package, whenever we're looking at data, we look at, is it progressing proportionate amounts of every group as we would expect through the process? And one of the things our clients like working with us is they can see that data in real time. So we will, if that's ever coming up, the assessment team will get a call to say what's going on in our pipeline, what are we doing about it, and we can show that we've taken action, and we've been very successful in winning awards for our approach to that. So Association for Business Psychology Awards, for example, we were shortlisted for quite a few areas where we've shown that we've been able to make real-time changes to our processes where something's not performing as you'd expect, which have had a real positive improvement in that area. So that's the ethos that we'll carry on taking through, whether it's manual screening, human screening, or AI. We'll be constantly looking at that data and making tweaks as needed.
So this season we are operating with a product, an AI product, which is live and is currently happening around it. When we went out to clients to talk to them about it and to the introduction of it, what was the reaction? Was it a positive reaction to it? Was people reserved? Have we had clients, push back a little bit regarding it? How's that been?
So I think clients overall have been very positive about it. There have been a few that maybe if they've previously used an AI tool that hasn't quite gone to plan, they've been a little bit more nervous. They haven't necessarily felt that they can trust the product. But we have been able to show, and will continue to show through our data, that actually it is delivering what we say it will. It is being fair and consistent. I think one of the things we are doing in order to ensure fairness and consistency at the moment is we've got quite firm criteria that client video interviews need to fall into. So for instance, at the moment we're only using the AI for clients that have a scale of 1 to 5 on their video interviews, because we know that works effectively. We have got some clients that have a different scoring scale. So at the moment we haven't talked to them about what introducing it would look like, although we've talked to them about the concept and they are excited. But we wouldn't want to kind of retrofit the process to their scoring, because we wouldn't be able to guarantee that consistency piece. But it is something that we will be working with them in the future. Yeah. But yeah, I think positive, definitely.
Good. And in terms of the QA process that we have, particularly different to the human process, it doesn't sound like it is. It's probably more vigorous, I'd say, ultimately, if anything, because there's potentially a bit more manpower to basically get across it, even more so, yeah. Yeah,
so I think we've refined over the last few years the principles that we have for our human QA, and we've used those to inform how we do the QA of our AI. So it is a very similar process, definitely. Probably, as you say, more human QA is actually being utilised. So if anything, it'll be a more rigorous quality assurance.
So in terms of the overall process, we talked about candidate fairness, I guess, ultimately sort of through the process. Do we change our processes in any way in terms of the way in which we deliver the feedback to an individual candidate, or is it pretty identical to the overall process that we've always had? It's just basically, obviously, it's dealing with something that a human being used to deal with, and we're just managing it faster. So nothing really changes at the back end in terms of anything.
I think if anything, it might be a slightly better process.
Okay.
So with our blended assessment, if candidates complete that is a number of auto-scored elements plus a video interview, which is obviously manually scored. So on the auto-score elements, they get an automated feedback report anyway, so that's not impacted. But they can, for some clients in particular, they can phone up and ask for feedback following their video interview if they want to. When we use human screeners, that feedback is dependent on the quality of comments that are left by the screeners, on how well a candidate may have done on the video interview questions. Sometimes there's more detail there than others, whereas with the AI, we've set it that it automatically gives a certain length rationale for the score that it has given. So candidates are going to be getting, if they want it, candidates have the opportunity to get more detailed feedback on their video interview performance with the AI scoring than with human scorers.
Do you think there's misconceptions that's in the market at the moment regarding AI generally in the screening process? Do you think of what you've seen, what you've read, you talked about, I guess what some of the science was ultimately around it? How do you see sort of that outlook? Because we're doing it, it's live, it's happening at the moment around it. The future is probably going to introduce more of this. Do you think there is misconceptions and understanding?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. But I think possibly those misconceptions would be misconceptions about how Amberjack are introducing it. They might not be how other providers of AI are providing it. And that comes back to that point I was making earlier, where perhaps sometimes people are rushing into things to get ahead of the AI trend rather than introducing it carefully. I think one of the things you asked about client perception on our approach, when we first raised it, you could feel there was a little bit of, I'm not sure, we really like the safety of the Amberjack team scoring it. We've been on the calibration sessions. We know the quality that goes into that. So we're not sure about moving towards AI. But when we actually say to them, we are replicating that process, you can see what we're doing, and we involve them in how we sort of train the AI effectively and how we essentially recreate that calibration session. That's where more and more clients saying, oh, well, if you're just replicating that process, and then they see that we're using their specific materials, their specific context, we're not just training the AI to score assessments generally, we're training the AI to score their specific assessment for their specific cohorts, for their specific needs. And that's helping us really reassure clients that it's going to do what they need it to do.
Yeah, good. Sorry, Lauren,
I was going to say, I think as well, one of the really nice things that has come out of some of the conversations is even clients who don't use us as their screeners, if they screen in-house, they hear that that we've got this AI screening product, and they actually want to talk about bringing it in for to pick up, because maybe they've got an internal talent team that's a bit stuck for resource. Maybe they haven't got the people on site to do the screening themselves. Maybe they use a external team that they're not seeing the consistency coming through, so they're showing interest in the tool as well, so we could be providing value to them.
Yeah, good. I think it goes back to the point you were describing, Martin, in terms of, or we were talking about, is the application rate is so high, and generally partially due to AI allowing a candidate to apply more freely in terms of applications being able to process the information quickly. I think organisations need to think about, how do they counter that from a candidate experience perspective. Myself having two boys, one's 22, one's 20, doing a placement. So when Isaac was looking for his placement, his candidate experience was varied so much within that space. You know, he's a super bright boy, lots of work experience in terms of what he was getting, but it was very, very varied in that application process. And these were good organisations that he was applying for, which I know have good processes, but I think it's just the amount of pressure that's being put on at the top of the funnel. And this isn't just early careers, this is on volume recruitment space in terms of people just mass applying through the process. And I had it within an investment bank for a different role, a PA role, where it was easier to basically headhunt for that PA rather than advertise for that PA, because the number of applications that would come through in one day just sort of bombarded the recruitment team to sort of manage that candidate experience and etc. for it. So it's not just happening in the early careers, it's not just happening in volumes, it's happening in other areas of recruitment. And I think organisations need to be a little bit smarter about how they do that application process for them as well. So we talked about candidate experience, we've talked about trust within it. We seem to, from what you've described, we seem to be getting it right in that process. Lauren, you spoke about NPS scores, you know, as a way of kind of checking that overall candidate experience and how they feel about it. What's next for us, I guess, in Amberjack, around maybe assessment and the way in which we're looking at AI in the future of doing it? I know we've been very much, and it may be worthwhile just describing that everyone was trying to be protective against AI in assessment. It was, you know, we're trying to protect. But how are we looking at it at the moment in terms of the outlook and the future?
Yeah, well, there's loads of really exciting applications. So if I actually start away from assessment, I think there's something huge around the candidate management side of things. So one of the things that we put a lot of attention into, it comes back to that point around how we manage candidates for every stage of the process, not just the assessment. What we want to make sure is that candidates feel really, really comfortable raising any concerns that they've got about the assessment process, whether that be, I'm not sure that's right for my needs, I might need an adjustment to that assessment, or I'm actually a bit nervous about that. Could someone tell me a little bit more about what's going to happen? We offer very proactive candidate management services, but I think often if people are speaking to a human about that, they might be like, this is going to be recorded, this is going to get back. That again, that trust, we do our best to build up that trust, but there are naturally some concerns. Whereas what we're seeing in the early sort of implementation of using AI to say, this is what the assessment looks like, is there anything we could do to help you? We're actually getting better response rates in terms of, do you know what, I haven't declared this yet, but actually here's my need. Can we do anything with the assessment to help me? Which is exactly what we want. So they're telling us earlier about needs that they've got. And then Lauren's just launching a project we're really excited about, which is around positive action. So candidates from underrepresented groups, how do you give them live in the moment coaching throughout the process so that, you know, they're able to ask those questions and get themselves as prepared as possible for the assessment. We're not giving them an unfair advantage. We're giving them information that's readily available, but we're just giving them opportunities to ask it in different ways and ways that suit them. So for example, via WhatsApp, they can just, ping over a WhatsApp and they'll get some information about what the assessment is looking like. They don't have to wait and be available 9 to 5 to call someone to ask them details and then have the risk that's being reported back. So again, when we look at the outcomes of those, that's having hugely beneficial data in terms of getting more of the underrepresented groups that we're interested in through to the later stages of the process. So look, some really exciting applications of using AI.
Good. And I know that for maybe future podcast and discussion, but we're working with an organisation in the use of AI in the actual assessment, in the assessment process. So really trying to judge and someone's application of a tool basically to get results, and then looking at kind of those behaviours and the way in which people do. And I just think that's super exciting. It's kind of the future of the way in which we need to think about AI rather than kind of the protective nature. And I think you gave some good examples there. But I don't want to spoil a future good podcast, so maybe we'll just leave people hanging a little bit on that one and talk about that maybe in a month or two. And do you think, sort of thinking about the future, do you think that the QA process will change at all? You know, in the way I know we talked a lot about controls checks, everything that we do regarding it. I suppose as we use more AI in other aspects and other areas, then we need to introduce it there, and we need to make sure that we're completing those checks. But did you have a thought process on that? Do you think anything will change, things will advance around QA with the adoption of more AI actually in the process?
I'm sure things will change in the future. I think things are changing all the time, aren't they, in terms of how people are utilising things and the speed at which things are being implemented. I don't think in the short to mid-term we see any changes from our perspective until we've gathered as much data as is possible to understand, you know, at what point we can start to let the AI go, if you like, with less of a QA. But at the moment, the thing that is key for us is that consistency piece. So as it stands, probably the quality assurance from our side will stay as it is, regardless of what tool it is that we're implementing. We will be wanting to keep that human wraparound.
Good. And I put you a little bit on the spot. So in one sentence, maybe two, but in one sentence, what does fair AI mean to each of you in what we're talking about in process? See, I told you I was going to put you a little bit on the spot. That's all right. I'll make the next question a little bit easier, maybe for you. But you got a sentence on what you think?
Fair AI. I think fair AI is about building trust with clients and candidates.
Yeah, great. That's all right. Lauren, you can steal that. I'm more than happy to steal that. I agree.
No, I agree with Martin, and just also that consistency piece. So trust and consistency.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, listen, I really appreciate the thoughts regarding the tools in which we're using at Amberjack at the moment. I know we're super excited to be using them. I know equally the clients are as well. But I thought just as a bit of fun at the end, just a couple of statements, and whether you just say they're true or false to me. So, okay, first.
At the same time, or?
Yeah, I think you maybe have to go at the same time, because otherwise it wouldn't be fair, would it? Because I don't want anyone copying anyone. So, AI will replace assessors, true or false? True.
I need a minute to think. True.
True, yeah. AI can't be trusted to make hiring decisions.
False.
False. Caveat that you need the human wraparound.
Great.
It was true or false.
Caveats? I didn't put caveats down when I was doing my preparation, but okay. But I do agree with the comment, and it's a fair comment. And the final one, so AI screening is faster but less fair.
False.
Yeah, and for me, the faster piece is important in terms of running an organisation and dealing with the number of applications that we have to really, really think about candidate experience. Ultimately, it's so important to the clients which we operate within, but more importantly, just to a certain extent, the poor candidate at the other end who's really looking, really keen, really hungry to find, whether it's a graduate role, whether it's a placement role, whether it's an apprenticeship role. They're looking, for their future, and they get really excited, regarding that. And we need to think about the way in which we can kind of introduce a better process to doing that. And I think we're on the right track, basically within Amberjack, to help that. So listen, I'd like to thank you both for your time. Really appreciate it. If anybody's got any further or follow-up questions, please directly contact us at Amberjack. We're more than welcome to talk you through any of those questions. I reference again Lauren's great blog, which talks a little bit more about this within our website. But thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate all the honesty in the conversation. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.